Hi, welcome to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to draw a puffin and paint it using watercolor. What is a puffin, you ask? Well, it's one of the cutest birds that ever could have existed. One of our friends went to Iceland with his wife, so he took these pictures of these puffins. He let me print them to use for this tutorial. And anyway, if you want to see more pictures from their trip, this is his Instagram name. Check it out. You will definitely want to go to Iceland if you look at his amazing pictures of this place. We're going to be drawing it. We're not going to be doing it in this orientation. Instead, we're going to be doing more of a portrait style painting of the puffin in this direction. So these are really, really fun birds, and I'm excited to draw and paint it with you today. All you need are basic watercolor supplies. You need watercolor paper, and I'm just using Mr. Otter Studio's watercolor paper. You need paints. I'm just using a simple 8-color set. And you need brushes. This is a 3/4 inch flat and a number 10 round. These come with our watercolor sets if you buy them on Amazon. You need a paper towel and some scratch paper, water, and a pencil and eraser to draw with. Optional is some masking tape. And this is just to tape the borders. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is tape the borders just so we can see where we're going to be drawing this puffin. So go ahead and grab your masking tape if you're using it and just tape those borders. Okay, so once we get those edges taped, we can go ahead and start drawing this puffin. So grab your pencil. I'm going to be drawing really dark. I'm going to be drawing dark so that you can see my drawing, but make sure you draw light so that you don't have a ton of lines to erase. The puffin is made up of very simple shapes. I like to just draw a grid line showing where the middle of my paper is. I like to divide the top from the bottom and the left from the right side, just so I can see about where the middle of it is, and then it helps me to figure out where to put the head and where to put these other things. So let's just start by drawing the head of the puffin, and it's up in this corner. It does cross through halfway, but it's all above this line. So, and the beak. So here we go, we're just gonna draw in a circle. All right, let's draw the beak. It's gonna come lower than the bottom of the head, not too low. It's not gonna pass the halfway point. And basically you're just gonna come right off the nose, bump it out, curve it down, and then bring it back in. And then you're just gonna come up and then up and in. So we're almost drawing a triangle, but it's kind of pointed down. And then the mouth is just gonna come up like that into the face. So let's go ahead and put the body in now. So we're gonna come down from the neck, curve in, and then we're gonna curve back, and then start to come down once we get into this area. So start over a little bit from where you drew the beak and start drawing a line down that starts to puff up after you pass that halfway point. And then it comes back down and moves towards the back. And then we can see two legs. There's one that's kind of coming this direction and forward. And then another one that is coming, it's coming a little bit back. So draw almost like a backwards C. And then you can just put this leg in. It almost starts to meet up with this one. Okay, now once we have those basics in, and this is going to be a little bit bigger, and these lines are just kind of where the feathers come to. All right, now let's come up to the top of the bird and let's start to put some of the details in the face. Before we do that, let's just draw the lines for the body. So we're gonna come up right here and down. So it's almost just like a little point, and then it curves back, comes forward, and then down. This is the wing of this bird. And then puffins have these really, really cool eyes. All right, so if we divided this into quarters, this is gonna help us figure out where to put the eye. So the eye is forward a little bit, but it's in this square. So we're just gonna draw a big circle about right here. Let's change the shape of the head. So it's not round here, it kind of comes straight back, comes up to a point, and then back this direction. And then it comes down into the beak, and the beak, it doesn't come all the way up on the head. I'm gonna move it forward just a little bit right there. All right, now let's draw where this cool mask is that it has. So you're gonna step down onto its beak and draw a line coming up, and then it's gonna cut down and almost make like a leaf shape, and then come down and meet up with the mouth. And then just draw kind of like a line that's going to be coming around the back of the head that meets up with this. So this whole area along with this line, that is all going to be white. So I'm going to erase this line. That's part of the neck now. And then inside of the eye, I'm going to draw another circle that's just a little bit smaller. And I'm going to draw this almost M shape right above the eye. And this is just kind of a shaded area above it I'm just going to put in. And then below the eye, you just want to come down a little bit. And there's another, it's just like a big shape that's just like a rectangle under the eye. And then it just comes up and back into this area. It's just like a little crease really, but it ends up looking like a dark area because it's a shadow. Here is the beak, and a little bit above the beak, there's this cool orange shape. So we're just gonna put that in, and then underneath it is another gray area. On the nose, first we're gonna draw this kind of tan area. It's just like going right along with this line. And then we're gonna draw almost like an arrow in here. And this is all gonna be black. And then draw another line just coming around the arrow. And then these are gonna be the light areas. And there's just kind of two highlights on the beak in front of that. If there's too many things going on, you don't have to draw all of these parts. There is gonna be another light area under this. I wanna keep that nice and full. And really, that's the basics of this bird. So pretty simple to draw. The only other details we might need to put in are on the feet. So here, instead of a line being here, I'm just gonna erase that line, and you're gonna draw some feathers. Okay, and the legs, it's probably not a good idea to cut the legs off where I did, but we will put some grasses going over them to kind of hide that. And that's basically it. So pretty simple drawing. Now let's go ahead and get ready to paint. So if you're left-handed, put everything on the left side of your paper, right-handed, right side. For the background, I am going to use this brush. So the background is a mixture of black, green, and gray. So we're just gonna make a big, huge puddle right here. I'm making it with my big flat brush. And I don't want any details in the background. I just want it to be super loose. And usually I paint it last, but for this one, I'm gonna be painting it first. You don't even have to paint a background, but if you wanna paint it, this is how we're gonna do it. You can make a green with blue and yellow, or you can just use the green right out of your palette. And there is a little bit of like orange back there. I don't know how it got there or what it's doing there, but it's there. So I'm just gonna make sure I have a little bit of it to use, and I might make that really bright. So what I'm gonna do is, I have my black that's kind of a gray, and I am just gonna start painting it in the background, adding some other colors into it, but I'm gonna try to cover it all really quickly. So I have these three colors, and I'm just gonna start pretty quickly, and the reason I'm doing this is so that it's pretty hazy and no sharp edges, basically. And I do have to be careful around especially the nose and other shapes like that. So as I'm painting in this, I'm just starting to add a few greens in there. So we just have a nice simple background. While that's drying, I'm gonna mix up a light gray that I'm gonna start painting in some of these areas on the face, in here as well. So we already have black, but we actually need this to be even lighter. So I'm just gonna make a puddle right here because that's too dark. And we're gonna look at the puffin and kind of look at these shadows. So while the background's drying, as long as you don't smear it with your arm, we're okay to kind of work in this area. And what we're gonna do first, light to dark, and I'm just gonna paint in some of these shadows on the face. So there's a little bit of a shadow in front of this eye, and I want those edges to be soft. So I'm just blotting off my brush and then coming back around those edges. And then we also want this area under here to be soft, and I can paint black over this, so I'm just gonna go over this whole area and come in like this. And again, I want it to be soft, but it also has feathers, so I'm just gonna use some texture to soften this one up, just by bringing lines. And the texture of the feathers are gonna be going this way. So like if I put some in here, once I get to the top, I'm just blotting my brush off, and then I'm just bringing some lines out of this area. I'm taking that same shadowy color and I'm gonna put it right under here. It's almost like leaving a V in there, and then I'm just blotting off my brush, and I'm just gonna come in here and just add some texture with some lines. And this is just to soften up those lines so it doesn't look like a cliff, instead it looks like a shadow. So basically what we're doing is we're taking our gray and we're layering it, and we're trying to create some shadows under the face here and underneath the chest and body here. We're creating some depth, also some texture. This bird has some great texture. So one thing we can do, once we get the color light enough, we don't want to take a super dark color. We're gonna work light to dark. You kind of get the gray on your brush, pinch it, so you kind of get this texture, and then you can add some of the shadows just by doing brush strokes. Birds are a great thing to learn to do watercolor with because you learn how to create texture and value and shadows with your paintbrush, which is pretty simple. So even up in these areas though, we can see some shadows. So it's not completely white. You can take that same color up onto the face. You just want to be careful because it's not going to be everywhere. And you can take it right up into this area since that's going to be dark anyway. So we're just layering it, and I'm kind of using the same color just to get these areas darker. All right, while that is drying, let's go ahead and add some of these lighter areas on the nose here and maybe in the eye as well. So I've got an orange mixed up here that was for my background. If you don't have it, just mix water with a little bit of orange. So we're just gonna paint in, you could actually paint the whole beak in with this light color. The dark color will go over it, just don't paint in this first area right here. And you can use that same color just to indicate where these feet are. I'm just painting in the top part of the feet right here. Let's mix up this color that's gonna be in here. So this is more of a brown. So I'm just gonna grab my orange and mix it with black, maybe even a little bit of green, to get like a brown color. It almost looks like this. It's like an orangey gray. And that is going to be on this first thing right here. It's kind of a brown color. I'm mixing up green and orange, making sure there's more orange than green. But I do not want it to look green. I'm just trying to neutralize the color just a little bit. And then along this back side, we'll take that darker color, creating a little bit of a shadow. You can let it dry if you want it to be a little bit more bold. So let's go ahead and make a lighter gray. Come to the feet, and let's go ahead and add it to some of these feathers here. And some of these feathers underneath are really dark. And also, I see some lines I forgot to erase, so I'm just going to erase that. Especially in these white areas, you want to get rid of those lines as quickly as you can. Okay, so just a little bit of shading on the back of the leg and on the front. And now let's come back to the face. All right, let's go ahead and paint in some of these orange areas on the nose and in the eye. So we've mixed up an orange here. Let's just make sure that it's bright enough. We might need to add a little bit more color and add a little bit of red to it. So blot your brush off. Get the same color we just mixed up to make a lighter color. Rinse it with some water, blot it off, and then use that color to paint in this first area right here. And paint in those highlights with it as well. And while we're waiting for that to dry, we can mix up a color with a little bit more yellow in it. So it's like a true orange. And we can put some of that right in this cool shape right here. The orangey color we just put on the face is also in the legs. So just cover them with it. All right, this is pretty dry. So let's go ahead and grab that red orange color that's a little bit brighter. And let's go ahead and paint in the beak. So we're leaving this area because that's going to be dark. But let's go ahead and paint in the main part of the beak. So around the edges, and it could even be darker. And if you accidentally cover up some of those stripes, you can just rinse your brush off and try to pull them back out. Let's grab our black that we used for our background, and we're just going to paint in this area on the nose, this triangle shape. We'll probably darken that up a little bit later. And while we've got this red color, let's put it in around the eye. And it doesn't really matter if you paint in the middle area because we'll be covering it up, but just in case. And there is a little bit of this color actually that kind of comes up into this M. Grab that same color that we filled this in with, maybe add a little bit more black to it. We just want it to be about that dark, maybe a tiny bit darker, but not pitch black. So I'm just getting some of it off my brush, maybe about like that. And then we're gonna paint underneath this shape, and be careful, because at least if mine is still wet. So I'm just leaving kind of like a white road there. And then take that same color. Some of these areas in here aren't quite so dark. So I'm just going to paint it in with this light color first, and then we'll add the really dark black color. So like up in here, it's not quite as dark. And then we'll just add black all the way over the top of this. All right, while that is drying, let's go ahead and work on the feet. Since we have orange mixed up, we have most of the colors that we need. So let's grab that orangey color, and I'm just darkening it up by adding more orange and a little bit of black. You could add green too, but I'll just add a little bit of black to it. I just want to get some of the shadows that are on the back of these legs. Because what we're really trying to create is the illusion, right, that there's light coming down from the sky. There's like some wrinkles on the front of these. So I'm just bringing some lines across and some lines up and down. Same thing with this leg, some lines across. This is the fun part because we're going to start putting in some of the darkest details, and it's really, I feel like, going to make this look a lot more vibrant and more actually like a puffin. So if you're still with me, you are doing a great job. I thought this would be easy to paint, and it's not that hard, but there for sure are a lot of steps you have to follow. So great job sticking with it. So I'm grabbing this darker black, and I'm coming in the beak again over this area because it's not as dark as it needs to be. And you have to wait till it's dry to do this or it won't really work. At least it won't work very well. And then I'm just going to indicate really quickly with this where the opening of the mouth is in the front. And then with this same black that you have on your brush, the top of the head is actually going to be pretty light. So I'm dipping in black, dipping in water, and then I'm just going to go along this. I'm leaving a little bit of white in front of the background. Make sure you don't forget about this little part of the head that comes back. There's a little light area under here as well. Use your brush to make that area a little bit more textured. And remember, we paint from light to dark, so this is probably going to be darker than we're painting it right now. And also remember, these are feathers, so we don't want to have like these really sharp lines here. You can even fan your brush out at this point, but I'm just kind of drawing with my paintbrush. So these are feathers, so we just want to make sure it looks like there are feathers kind of coming over this. So I'm just painting in this area where the wings are with black. And it's okay if you get some areas that are light in there. While we have this dark color, we need to add a few of the shadows that are underneath this. So I want some of these shadows in underneath here, showing, indicating, and then for sure back here on some of these feathers. And then if it's too abrupt for you, you can just soften it up a little bit with your paintbrush. Rinse your paintbrush, blot it off, and then just come in there and just soften up those edges. All right, let's just work on the eye while the rest of this is drying a little bit. Normally I would do this last, but I feel like we're waiting for some areas to dry, so we'll just go ahead and put it in. So I'm just grabbing pure black with a tiny bit of water in it, because there is kind of like a little bit of an eye in there. Go ahead and just paint in that entire circle. And while we have that dark color, let's go ahead and put it in under the eye, and make sure your painting's dry. Be careful, I shouldn't be setting my hand on this. So remember that M shape, we're just kind of filling that in now with black. And I painted around this area, and I'm just gonna come back over. Now let's tighten up some of these details in here. So I'm just taking this black color, blotting it off on my paper towel, and then I'm gonna come in and add some more shadows in here. So there's a shadow underneath here. So this part of this shape is really dark. And then the top part starts to lighten up. So I'm just putting a little bit of that dark in it, rinsing my brush off, blotting it off, and then I'm just gonna feather it up just a little bit to darken it a little bit, but not too much. And I'm just using this dark color to go again underneath the beak and outline that where it opens up. And now let's darken up the back side of the head. So just grab the dark color that we've mixed up over in our tray, and we want it to be darker here and then slowly get lighter. So you're just gonna paint the darker color in, blot your brush off, and then we're just gonna start feathering it towards the front. And then we're gonna grab the dark color, and it is almost pitch black in this area right here. So we might need to grab a little more black. Get it on our brush, dip it in the puddle, and then let's come in here and darken it up a lot. So do you see how I'm just kind of working in like this, and then I'm rinsing my brush off, blotting it off, and then I'm gonna come in and just soften up these edges because they're not quite as dark. Flatten my brush out, work in here. And then the back is actually really dark all the way. You just see some highlights maybe up here on the top of the wing. But other than that, this is very, very dark. So this area right here is really dark. You can just see some highlights up here on the wing. So go ahead and add those in. Just blot off your brush and just kind of feather it in there. And then you can just start adding, like if you feel like you need a little bit more feathering, go ahead and add it in. Now's the time to kind of fix it up before we add this grass underneath. I'm adding pure black, and then I'm trying to add this circle in the eye. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit more shading probably to the beak, at least to the underneath part. And we need to add some shadows to the back of this. So it's still white, but I'm just putting a little black on my brush, blotting it off on my paper towel, and then I'm just coming back there to add that shadow. That should not be white. And so we've got some nice shading, so look at it and figure out if you need to darken some areas up, if you need to add a few more shadows anywhere. Now is the time to do it. So you can make it brighter, right, by adding black, or you can darken it up. You can make it brighter by adding more color, or you can make it darker just by adding black. I can also just get a little bit of black on my brush, put it in the water, and then just cover some of these areas up with a little bit of gray. So I'm just adding some details, and then in front of the nose. There's some texture inside of this shape. I wish I knew what it was, but I'm just gonna add a little bit of black along the bottom and just a few little details of some texture inside of that. Okay, so now we have our puffin. He looks pretty good. This was a good lesson in layering, but now we need to add the grass that he's standing in. So one way we can add the grass underneath is just with quick brush strokes. There's a lot of yellow, there's a lot of green in it. First, let's mix up some colors. So I already have a green mixed up, maybe you do too, but I need a little bit more color up here. So I should be mixing green next to green, but since I've already done it up here, let's just go ahead and go with it. Add a little bit of orange to the green to neutralize it a little bit, or else it's gonna look a little crazy in this painting. And then we also need some green that is a little bit more yellowy. So let's just put orange with it. I mean, not yellow, but orange. I'm gonna take one color, and these are long sprigs of grass. So and they're definitely coming in this direction. Like all the grass is going in that direction. I'm just gonna be careful not to go over this white part of my leg. Instead, I'm gonna start right by it. It's okay if your brush gets a little bit choppy looking, like that, like soft lines, that's okay. We don't want it to be super duper sharp. And I'm gonna come in here and add some of the same colors, and in here as well. Except in here, I'm gonna kind of point them down. Almost like it's like sitting in this grass, even though it really is coming across it. Now we're gonna let that dry. If we try to do too much at the same time, it's not gonna look like grass, it's just gonna look like a green shape. So just wait, you can add some more details to the eye. This is a really good time to just fix any areas you feel like you need to fix. This actually looks almost square right here. So I'm gonna grab this black and I'm just gonna bring it down and back. And then this is almost like a shape that comes to here and stops. And while we're waiting for that to dry, you can put more details like in the beak right here. So I'm just adding more layers, I'm darkening this up. And I'm just gonna feather my brush to get it that texture that I want. Be careful you don't use a lot of water in this part or you can lift up some of those colors that you have underneath. And that is super hard to fix. All right, now I think this green has dried enough that we can add another layer over it. So I'm gonna just grab that more yellowy brown green we mixed up. Get some of that on your brush and then let's add some of those areas in here as well. Not too many. You don't wanna like overpower it with these colors. And then I'm just gonna make a really dark green and I'm gonna bring it down in the bottom to add a little bit of depth. To make the green darker, you can add more green and a little black. There's a bunch of ways to darken up colors. So now we're gonna take that dark green and we're just gonna add it in here to ground this because it's kind of like floating in these light areas. So anywhere it's white, I'm taking this darker green and I'm kind of just painting it in. But I'm just kind of trying to add a little bit of depth. I don't want to make this too texturized though. You want to be careful. But I might bring some of the grass up onto it now. You know, just a few. I don't want to like make it all crazy, but we do need to show that these are coming in front. All right, let it dry. Take the tape off and you are finished. You can again go back in. Of course, you can go back in, add more color, add more details, add more texture. You can add different colors inside of the eye and make it stand out. But that is the basics of the puffin. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you learned something today. Thanks for sticking with it and joining me today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.